we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
We are now kicking it old school with the one and only Tony Segreto. Brought to you by Texas Roadhouse.
Tell me, doctor, where are we going this time?
Good morning, world. Welcome to another edition of the Defo Show. No Defo, just Lubie. And that smiling face from yonder north where they don't sweat, they glisten because it's like 60s in the evening.
54 this morning, Lubie.
And 50s in the mornings and 75 in the afternoon. Thank you for that, Tony Segreto. Welcome, one and all. Appreciate you joining us. We've been off for a little bit. Defo will rejoin us hopefully later today at Even Kill Fish Shack for a Mike Mayo's lunchbox and tomorrow morning. But I would be remiss to miss an edition of the one and only Kicking It Old School with Tony Segreto, thanks to Texas Roadhouse. Ed Garcia cannot join us as well. He's the traveling man. Hopefully he'll join us again next week.
What's going on?
He's traveling. He's out of the country this time. I don't know where he was. Last week they had some big meeting. I'm presuming he's doing a vacation. I know school's coming back, so probably
just you and I love standing here.
Just you and me, my friend. So Ed Garcia hopefully will be back next week. And a lot to get to. Dolphins training camp did open up last week. Defo and Tony talked a little bit about it. It's something that Tony knows very well. Dolphins training camp throughout the years. The Olympics rolls on. We've now moved into the track and field, moved through the swimming events, the NBA, the basketball. I'm sorry, the NBA. The basketball has moved into the knockout stage.
Saturday for that.
So we'll talk about that as well, as Tony has his own experiences with the Olympics, and he has a bird's eye view to the Olympics as his daughter is sitting there in Paris as we speak, probably working right now. So a lot to get to. How are you doing, Tony? How's everything up there in the not so great white north?
What not so great white north? The great white north.
Well, it's not. You're at least not getting snow, I presume. Who knows? You may be the weather you guys are freaking getting. But
No,
how's it going up there?
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's great. I'm in my happy place.
All right. So before we get to, and we talked a little bit Olympics last week, and I always like talking to you about these things because you had so many different experiences personally with it, and your daughter's there now. So I'm curious to get some. I know you guys talk a lot, so I'm curious to get some of the behind the scenes stuff, whatever you're willing and she's willing to share. But training camp's always a fun thing because I've never been. It's funny you talk about 50s at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was in the desert in Morocco. I was in the desert in Israel. I born and raised in South Florida. I've never been so hot as when I was standing there trying to interview Ryan fucking Tannehill, and there was 10 of us fighting for space, and practice had just let out, and you only get like 3 minutes, especially with the people that don't want to talk. So like the sweat pouring from your brow.
There's nothing worse than training camp. Nothing can compare to training camp. I'm telling you, they could put me in a bin with puppies, dogs, and they could rip my toenails off, and it still would pale.
It's funny because I remember being a little kid. I remember like camp. It was like a field trip to go to training camp, and you sit in the thing and the canopy, and like you don't care that it's hot, and it's like the coolest thing ever. So like, who are we to complain about doing this as a job? We usually don't, but I will say training camp, I've never been so trying to ask questions to people as they're drenched in sweat, you're drenched in sweat, and they have a sub from La Spada's waiting for you in the media room. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like I never forget those moments where it's like, and they would ask us to go every year, and Defo and I would dread it because it's just so hot. And it's like, look, I know you're into sports as much as anyone. You covered it as long and as well as anyone. And you literally went from sports anchor to news anchor. So the minutia is something at times in sports you have to get into. But shit, the minutia you have to get into in the middle of training. Like it's the most we would watch. Oh my God, Tannehill sailed one again. Yeah, and it's like, dude, it's training camp.
I covered training camp for 18 years, 19 years. And then after that, I just said no. Because, they were you talk about Spitzen, spritzing and spitzing and spitzing and weight. There was nothing worse than being dressed up. Like we had to be dressed up So you suit and tie.
Oh, you were wearing suits? Oh no, really?
It was
Oh
just
God, are you
you,
kidding me?
you didn't wear your jacket then, so
Okay.
you just wore a shirt and tie. But it was literally I had to change when I got to the office.
So that's the one I'll give it now. Like even the TV guys now, they wear, the polos and they'll wear, I guess, pants, which I can't even imagine. But I don't think I've ever seen someone in a suit. Like, holy crap. So, anyways, yeah, training camps, it's worthwhile. I know it's needed. And now to the point, it's,
But
it,
it's so much different now.
yeah. Well,
It's so
I was
much
gonna say it only carries so much weight now because right they used to do. Did Shula do 3 a days? Like I feel like I heard that Shula they don't
3 days,
do days.
4 days sometimes. He would get them out at night, before it got dark, and he would put them through walkthroughs.
Like now I know they don't even. I don't think they do 2 a days anymore. I don't. I think and it's very regimented, and we know colleges as well. But the NFL is extremely. Good morning, my mother-in-law. We know that it's not as regimented in the NFL, but it is to the point where there's less preseason. At one point, there was 6 preseason games, something like that, and like to the point where now there's 3, and the starters really only play like 1, and they may only play half of 1. And camp is not what it used to be, and all these other things are voluntary, and even some of the mandatory stuff we know guys screw around with. So it's just interesting. Like a lot of the time, people are like, it's more violent. That's why there's more injuries. A lot of people say, no, they're not ready. Like it takes them half a year to get into game shape.
Well, they got to make up their mind because either they're going to have a long training camp and and then the regular season, or a short training camp and then the regular season. I think if you ask the players would rather have a short training camp or no training camp at all,
Yeah.
and to start the season. But it'll be interesting to see how the Dolphins play. How the Dolphins' first preseason game goes.
They get it. Look, and the funny thing is, the Hall of Fame game is one I've never actually watched. I know you usually miss football so much that everyone cracks it on, but it's usually so dreadful that you can't do much with it. The Hall of Fame game Thursday was actually pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. It actually it resembled football. I mean, the Texans, their backup quarterbacks are 2 guys that have actually started within the last year, Case Keenum and Davis Mills. So that was interesting. And then the kid Rippin for the Bears actually pretty solid. So that gave you a taste of football. The Dolphins, I know, get started this week. And as a fan, I've always been able to watch preseason because, again, you want to see the second string, you want to see the third string. So it's viable.
It's fun. It just, you know what it does? It soothes the soul.
That's
That's
you
what
sound like
it
a
does.
degenerate.
It soothes the soul to have it back. And
You're like, yeah, like there's lines and there's over-unders.
How long is Tua going to play?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is that who knows? Does he play this game? I guess with only 3, maybe he'll play in the first quarter. But, like, what have you ever? Look, Shula is one of those old school dudes. I know Jimmy Johnson, where they all try to make every game matter, even the preseason. And I know that it's not about winning and losing. A lot of the time, you'll see like the Belichicks of the world not care about winning and losing, but they do care about how guys look. And you're trying to build depth and you're trying to fill holes. Like, from your experience, how much training camp's one thing, but the preseason, okay, right? From a day that used to have 6 preseason games, how much were you taking from preseason games? Because I know people get really into it, and I've always been hit or miss with the preseason.
Well, we were taught to buy into it because, there are players that normally wouldn't make the team if it wasn't for preseason, and there are. Mark Clayton, for example, and Mark Duper. Not Mark Duper so much, but Mark Clayton. If it wasn't for preseason, God knows where he'd be. What he would have done.
Okay.
Because he made his name in preseason. I could point out more and more players like that.
Yeah.
So for the players, for a guy looking to make the team, they're invaluable. For a guy who's on the team, they're paying rent. So, the old adage was that the preseason games would be, the starters would play maybe 1 series.
Okay.
And then the last game of the last preseason game of the season, they would play full 3/4 or a full half, and get game shape. Nowadays, I don't know how they go about doing it because it's all happen haphazard. But it soothes the soul, and it'll be good to see it out there again. And then let's get it on. Let's get going.
So what? Okay, so a guy like Shula, right? Like, how serious was he? A guy like to me, Marino only knew one way to play. That's what I'm always curious about when these guys go in the preseason and you don't take it that seriously, because any competitor I know, whenever they're out there, they're out there. Like it's basketball, they're out there.
Shula treated preseason like a regular season, like they were just added on.
Okay.
If they won, he was a son of a bitch if they won, and he was a son of a bitch if they lost. And I would tell him to his face too. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
He was tolerable when they won. He was intolerable when they lost. One time he took me into his locker room, and he was sitting there, and he had on his underwear, his socks, and his shoes.
This is Shula?
Yeah.
Don Shula.
Yeah. And his shirt.
Okay.
And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Sit down." I go, "Yeah."
Like, where do I look?
He goes, "What'd you think?" I go, "What did I think? What did you think?" So he was a classic. He was a classic, to say the least.
So, okay, going into this NFL season, I know your take on Tua. There's still a lot left to be desired. I get it. That's how a lot of people feel. That's fine. We look at the league, okay, because we talk so much about the Dolphins with you. What are some of the things you're intrigued to see? Okay, as a guy who's an avid football, a guy who literally is just happy to see.
I'm intrigued to see Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. I'm intrigued to see if they're as good as they claim to be.
Look, they've actually done a lot on the offense, because I keep going back to this.
I mean, you're asking me, so I'm telling you.
No, yeah.
I'm curious to see the best team in the league may be the Bears or the Packers.
Oh, you're watching a lot of NFL Network.
No, I'm not.
I know the Bears made some moves, but I don't know. I mean, I think they're going to be interesting. I think they've done a lot of things for Caleb Williams that they didn't do for Justin Fields. And if I'm Fields, I'm a little bitter that in one offseason they revamped their entire offense. Like the guy was.
I'm not what. You know what? I don't watch ESPN or.
Okay.
But I'm intrigued to see them. I'm intrigued to see just to see Aaron Rodgers play. I want to see how he meshes with this team, and if it's now. I don't know what they're saying on TV, but there's a head button. It seems like between he and Salas.
Yeah, well, that like, to me, all the moves in the world, all the this in the world, all the that in the world, it was all about their offensive line, and that's why he got hurt within like the fourth play of being out there. So it's like, what's changed now? So, but I know they drafted offensive linemen. I know they've gone and brought in offensive linemen. Okay, people say all the time it's hard to go from really bad offensive line to really good in 1 year. You can go from really bad to okay. I don't know if that's the thing for Rodgers. There is the hope is so high and the expectations are so high, and the fact that he overcame that injury and he's back and all the crap with the medical stuff that he pulled out of his ass.
Not to mention he's out there. I mean, he was going to be vice president. He was going to be. I mean, what's going on? He's living in a dream world. I swear.
Well, and he's 40 now, coming off of what used to be a career-ending injury, what used to be the kind of injury that if you do play with it, you're never the same.
And I think he wants to prove that he's better, that he can play. and I think he's looking beyond this year.
Oh God.
I think he's looking beyond this year.
I think he is. I think he supposedly talked about wanting to play 2 years, and he missed last year, so he wants 2 years. I'm very skeptical, and again, it's not just because I'm a Dolphin fan and they're the Jets. I mean, the Jet fans should be skeptical. It was a lot of hubbub for then nothing, and I presume he'll play more than he did last year because he didn't even get through a quarter. I'm just curious how much they were able to revamp the offensive line. What he is at this point of his career. With you just said it, his interests are all over the place between politics and going after the medical world and science and going after science and going on these retreats where he disconnects from being a mindful being, let alone society. I'm curious what's left there for football. And I get it. We've seen him and he's focused and he looks good in camp and Defo in his posts every day. It's just great. He looks great. He's there. I'm like, okay. I'm just, guys, even Brady, the age got to him, like coming off of that injury at this point of his career with a very young group of offensive pieces from the offensive line to the running backs to the receivers. I don't know. I'm very skeptical.
Solid
through a few games.
Solid sit. Now there's a misconnect here, but Solid said he's not going to play in the preseason.
Okay. So I agree with Scott. I think he's done. Like, you got to play a little. He didn't play all year. He didn't play all year. And all he kept talking about, I can come back halfway through the year. I can come back in a month. And he never came back.
No.
I don't know. I'm actually.
You know who's quietly got a good team is Buffalo.
Well, but I mean, it's not quite. I mean,
they're quiet this year. They
lost a lot of pieces, so everyone's ready to move on from them. I still think they're ahead of the Dolphins in the division. I don't know if they're head and shoulders anymore. I think it'll be very much like last year, where the Dolphins will be in the division. We'll see if when they get to December and January, like you always talk about, and they play the better teams, can they be in it? But look, Josh Allen's still their quarterback. McDermott's still a good coach. We'll see if they're able to. They bring in Coleman out of FSU, which I think is going to be a big move for them. Diggs and Allen did have their issues. It was well known, and it is important. As much as, receivers are prima donnas, the quarterback and the receivers have to be on the same page, and it felt like by the end of it, they were very happy to be apart from each other. So that in and of itself may be addition by subtraction, as we have seen in sports. So it's going to be interesting. The Chiefs are back to back, and by a lot of people's estimation, are better this offseason. They went and got the kid, the speedster out of Texas, who Worthy, who's ridiculous, and to put into that offense, they were missing that. His likeness was to Tyreek Hill before he got drafted by the Chiefs. So it's sort of scary to see him in that offense. They've retooled on defense. They are the class of the NFL, and it's going to be interesting. Look, the big intrigue, we talk about our guy from Michigan with Ed Garcia and his Wolverines, and they're going to be a big question mark with Sharon Moore this season. Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. The one thing Herbert needed, right, was a coach. They always had talent. They always had pieces.
We'll see what they do.
What is Harbaugh with him? Because the joke was Harbaugh wanted McCarthy, J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan, and he started to be around Herbert, and Herbert became his pet project. Like, he's really excited to have Herbert. I'm curious to see him back in the NFL with Herbert. Now that they've gotten rid of both of their receivers, now that they're retooling that team, there's no excuses for Herbert anymore.
Well, he may need a year of grace, and then let it fly after that, because it takes a year, even for Harbaugh. It takes a year. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm curious to see what this is a critical year for the Dolphins. This is a critical year.
This is make or break. This is
make or break. Make or break. Make for McDaniel, for Tua.
Yeah.
For them all. So, this is a critical year for them, and it's going to be a real good year. It's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be an interesting division. That division that the Dolphins are in, the AFC East, because you got the Jets, you got Buffalo, you got Miami. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but I think they're up for it. And November and December is gonna play it out for sure.
Well, it's what we've seen in the last 2 years, where at points in the season they were the number one team in football, had a cushioned lead in the AFC East, to the point where the last 2 years they found themselves in like the 5th, 6th, or 7th spot. Like that's not the place you want to be when you're not great in cold weather. You're not used to playing in cold weather, honestly. Even if these guys came from cold weather cities, once you're in South Florida, you're here. And as we all know, we all get used to the heat very quickly, and our blood thins out very quickly. And going into those temperatures is just something different. I look, the big question mark to me for them is the health. I mean, and that's the thing that people keep forgetting is when their offensive defensive line were healthy, they were murdering teams, and they were into a look like an MVP candidate. And even people like yourself, I remember going, oh, wow, okay, maybe some of the questions are answered. And then without an offensive line, the questions came back. And
the offensive line is everything at every level.
Yeah.
High school, in college, and the pros.
And it's been an issue for the Dolphins. Health. It's been health. They actually seem to have, for the first time in forever, it didn't seem like talent was the problem. Their offensive line was playing really good football into the middle part of the season, and then they lost like I think 3 or 4 of the starters. It's like, what you can't replace 3 or 4 starters. So I'm really curious to see if they've changed things, if they found a way to keep guys healthy, which it's usually not the case, especially in football.
This should be a good year for the Canes too.
Well, that's what the next thing I was going to ask. What
should be a really, really,
your
really
Canes?
good year.
It's not like the expectations in the past where people were like picking them just because they presumed they were going to be good because they had to be. People are picking them because they went and got one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks on the transfer market in Cam Ward. They bring back a lot of talent. They actually this time did go to the portal and were smart about what they brought in from the portal. And he's recruited. This will have been his 3rd class, I guess his 2nd as a coach.
He's building them up.
He's recruited top 10 classes every single year, and that talent at some point has to bear fruit, right? So most people have them in the top 20 across the board, and because it's a 12-team playoff, and because their schedule is, as an FSU fan, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Their schedule is one of the easiest schedules in the history of college football.
It is easy.
There's no reason for them not to win 10 games and be in the playoffs. So I don't know if you're up there, so you're not around the program like you've been your whole life, but I know you talk to people. Like, it feels like they're being smarter this year with expectations, where they're not bragging as much. They're just, Kane fans have been quieter, but I know that they have some kind of expectations this year where they haven't in the last few years.
I think Mario has gotten to him to keep quiet. I think that he is changing the culture. He has changed it already. He has brought in the staff that he wanted. He got rid of the staff he didn't want.
Okay.
He's bringing in his players, and he's using the portal real smart. And I'm curious to see how well they play, because they could be 10-1, 10-0. They could easily be that. And I can't see it. The only thing standing in their way is themselves.
Well, but that's been Crystal Ball's problem. Is there's 2 or 3 games every year going back to his time at Oregon that was FIU time, where you're like, what the fuck was that? Like
Pitbull Stadium.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
hey, that's a great name for a stadium.
That's good for them. I mean, look, it's they have a stadium and they're trying to do something with it. And Pitbull is a Miami guy, and $1.5 million isn't going to get you that far with Hard Rock. So with the Dolphins and the Canes, so good for them for doing that. I'm college football's back in 2 weeks, and FSU will kick it off.
FSU is their biggest rival. FSU is their biggest game. FSU.
It's at home this year for the Canes.
I know, but it's a critical year for FSU too, for Norvell.
It's going to be interesting to see them with clear expectations. Going into last season, they were ranked top 10, but a lot of people had them losing to LSU. A lot of people had them losing to Clemson. A lot of people thought that coming off a 10-win season, what would they be, to the point where they went undefeated and then got jobbed. And they, again, for the second straight year, return a lot of guys. They lost a lot of guys, but they actually were really good at returning guys that wanted to leave. They found a way to keep them. And They were, again, amazing in the portal because Norvell's literally become like a portal king. And they have their first top 10 recruiting class. And a lot of those guys are already showing out in camp. It's going to be interesting. And they themselves went and got one of the top 10 or so transfer portal quarterbacks in DJU, who has a lot to prove. Whereas Ward has gotten better throughout his college career. Uiagalelei did have his best season last year, it felt like he worked out a lot of kinks at Oregon State, but he's now in his third school. And he was a guy that was unlike Ward, who went to some JC, like Uiagalelei was a top 5 player coming out of high school, and the other guy is now playing for the Carolina Panthers and was the number 1 pick in Bryce Young. Like Uiagalelei was a 5-star. He was a guy that literally was huge coming out of high school and had a really good first year with Clemson and then fell off the face of the earth. He's grown, he's matured, he's in, I guess, year 6, whatever the hell it is. Like, those two quarterbacks, Ward and Uiagalelei, I'm really curious to see what they are. Literally, Uiagalelei didn't take any other visits. He, after watching Norvell with Florida State when he was at Clemson, put his eye on Mike Norvell, only wanted to play for Mike Norvell, and spurned the NFL, spurned other programs just to play for Norvell. And supposedly in camp, he's looked really good. I'm curious to see what Mike Norvell's able to get out of him, because the kid is a physical specimen, but he's had a lot of issues actually playing the quarterback position.
Yeah, it's funny. When I think of FSU football, I think of a team that'll finesse you, and they're a finesse team, but they've changed.
No, I was going to say years past, that felt like the Bobby days. It felt like that, but Jimbo into now, like Norvell's, they're not that finesse. He likes to run the ball down your fucking throat.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I want to respond to Andrew Peters.
Okay.
Enough. It's over. It's done. He's like, come on. What is this shit?
I was hoping you'd ignore that.
You're spending an hour a day taking a knee. Please. It's over. It's done.
Yeah, I have a weird relationship with the Canes because I'm born and raised down here, and I've talked about it a lot. My grandfather went there, and my grandmother volunteered there. They literally lived like, I think it was 5-10 minutes away from UM. My dad grew up 5-10 minutes away from UM. So I didn't have the vitriol for UM then that I've grown through the years, going to FSU and seeing the Cane fans in my stadium and going into the OB as an FSU fan. Like it's not Gator. Like in that game, I will root for UM over the Gators, obviously, to start the season or week 2. But I definitely don't have the love I once did. But we're here, and I did think that Cristobal hire was a coup. And I didn't think that we'd be here year 3, where he's not in fire territory, but he's in hot seat territory. Like if with this schedule, again, it's the second straight year they have a cake schedule. With this schedule, with a quarterback that everyone now is in Heisman contention, and it's definitely fitting. It's a 9 or 10 win year or bust. Like he's not going anywhere per se, but if they only win 7, 8, even 8 games, if they win 7, 8 games, I mean, look, they got to a bowl last year and then they really got throttled by Rutgers, and it was an average Rutgers team. There's momentum in recruiting. There's more momentum bringing in Ward, but when you watch them play on the field, there's not momentum there. So a lot is on this season for the Canes. And for Mario Cristobal himself, like he got a lot of credit for what went on in Oregon, and he deserved it. But a lot of people are wondering, was it Phil Knight? Like, was it okay? And at UM, he's doing great with recruiting. But if you were not seeing any of those kids outside of Ruben Bain, who may just be a freak of nature, we're not seeing any of those kids grow and turn into players on Saturdays and Fridays and Thursdays.
We're going to see this year, when we're going to see them. Let's put it this way. They got to play.
Yeah.
They got to play. We can talk all we want. We can procrastinate all we want. We can do all the things that you say we're doing, but we have to see them play.
Yep.
We have to see Clemson play.
Oh, Clemson's going to be interesting. This is a huge year. It's funny for Dabo. They've sort of been this year. They being remembered, but the last 2-3 years they are not in the same breath with the Ohio States, the Georgias, and the Alabama, like they were the 5 years before that.
Yep. So we got a lot to unpack and a lot to watch, and it's going to be a great season. It's going to be great. Have you been watching the Olympics?
I have been watching the Olympics, and I did want to get to that. Good job by you before we get out of here. Has your daughter given you any behind this, like what's going on over there in Paris? I know she's working these ridiculous days from 8 in the morning to 12 at night, so she may not be getting out.
She got to the tennis venue.
Oh, nice.
She got to the obviously the gymnastics venue, and she said it was just awesome. I mean, just to be there, for her to experience that like I did.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't tell you one thing that stood out. I saw Usain Bolt, win the 100.
Oh,
but
Jesus.
She saw, Simone Biles win the all around.
She did. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
That's the same thing, that's the same thing as you can't escape the fact that you're there.
Yeah.
And you're covering it live.
Yeah.
And you're one of people from all around the world.
Yep.
Covering the thing.
Yeah.
And you're a major part of it. And that's going to be a signature in her resume. Yep. And a signature in her memory, and a signature that she will tell her grandkids, and her grandkids will, I will tell my great grandkids how great it was, and she will tell them even how greater it was.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful, wonderful experience as a family to take it in, and yeah, it's special. It's really.
It feels like the Paris games have actually gone off. I know we're not done yet without a hitch. Like you haven't heard. A lot of times you hear this complaint or that complaint, and this issue, that issue. You really haven't. It seems like they're putting on a fantastic show.
They put on a fantastic show.
Great. Like the stuff the other day when you had talking about Simone Biles, Jordan bow down to their rival who won in what was it, the bars. Like that was spectacular. And like it's cool. Look, it's what we're seeing right now with the Democratic Party. Like it's nice to see humanity. Once again, we've been in this world of hatred and frustration and bitterness, and the Olympics used to be that, right? Like they used to be the place where, yes, we would settle scores, Russia and USA in the on the ice, fine, but it was also a place where people came together. It was a place where the world came together on center stage to compete and to praise one another and be like humans. And it's been, this Olympics sort of feels like that, where like you're seeing a lot of people like when on the track, when the country won for the first time, a gold for the medal for the first time ever.
They were all hugging her.
Everyone's hugging. From the other combatants, they showed the country that they were freaking losing it. Like it felt like the whole stadium, even though it's in the middle of France, was supporting. Like it's been. It's funny. I haven't been into the Olympics in a few. I guess it was really just Japan because it was 2021 instead of 2020, and the stadium was empty. So maybe that had a lot to do with this. But these Olympics have felt like, I'm not Cerny, where he's watching every goddamn thing. I didn't even know that existed. But like whenever I catch this weekend, I was with my in-laws and they're really into it. And like we all day Saturday, we just watched Olympics, and it was like really cool to just see like the atmosphere and the love and the competition. It was like Ledecky was cheering on her partner who got a bronze, and then the other girl, the dude from France who won 2 golds within 2 hours, and people from all over the world, Americans, felt because his former coach coaches him, was like supporting him. It was really cool to see like people coming together, which we haven't had in sports or in the world the last few years.
They Walls put it good yesterday, because you mentioned the Democratic Party, and I'm going to put that up.
It's just it feels
you're bringing there's joy. There's joy back in the games. There's joy back in the Democratic Party. There's just joy.
Yes.
And I've enjoyed the Olympics so much this year. And I'm, they have one signature event left, and that's the basketball game.
Okay. Well,
That's
it's done. Oh, geez. Okay.
That's Saturday.
Okay.
And that'll be it. And it's going to be sorry to see it's over, but I have great memories, and I have great memories of the Democratic Party. And it seems like we're turning it around.
Well, it seems like we're coming back to a light. Like, it seems like that's what people want, and I give people credit for fighting for what they want. To not be mad all the time, to not be bitter all the time. Things aren't perfect, and that's fine. And the stock market went down Friday, but what did it do yesterday? It rallied like a motherfucker.
It's going to be that way.
And that's okay. We used to take things in stride, it feels like, and now and I'm not talking about the PC people. I actually believe in being politically correct, because it's okay to listen to others when they are talking about their feelings. Yes. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we just are angry and bitter all the time, and I say we because I'm the same way, and it's like. It's tiring. It just gets tiring being so
all the
time.
I will say this. Trump and Vance are having a hard time figuring out what Kamala and what Was have that they can pick on, because they're at a loss. They're at a loss.
Well, no, it's just because they're not. They're going the other way. They're just going the other way. They are trying to remind people. They talk about being great. We're still great now. We're not perfect, but we're still great now, and we're here. So why not enjoy our time? One place we always enjoy our time, and hopefully he'll join us once again, Mr. Ed Garcia, next week, is Texas Roadhouse. Andy asked, do they show the NFL games? Yes. I don't know. I don't know if they're showing preseason games, but I would presume.
Oh, yeah.
They're big into the Dolphins. So I would presume the Dolphins games will be on whatever. What is it? Do they have 20 locations in South Florida? I know there's a lot of locations all throughout Miami. I think there's 6 to 8 locations in South Florida and more coming. Or northern South Florida areas as well. No better place to check out your football, your Olympics, or your politics than Texas Roadhouse. I know, Tony, up there, you guys do have one, and I know it's an hour or so away, but I could see you driving there because you are.
Oh, I do. I've driven there. I've driven there if only to get the rolls.
We're well aware. We love Texas Roadhouse. Again, it's one thing Ed talks about is, and we do on the lunchbox. It's great. We go to a lot of different smaller establishments, and they do specials, and they do different things, and they're changing things all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fantastic. I'm a fan of that, but I'm also a fan of a place that every time you go, you know what you're going to get.
Consistency. And you know what? There's 750. You see that? There's 750 of them around the country.
Yep.
Okay.
There's a reason.
I've been to probably 10 of them in my drives and what have you. All of them are alike. You get a consistent meal. You get, you order the poppers. They're boom. They're fresh. They're on, hot. Their steaks are good.
No, it's as good as any steak. Defo was at Hell's Kitchen and Gordon Ramsay's place, and he's like, it wasn't any better than the bone and ribeye you'll get.
No,
quarter the price. That's the thing is we're in this time with price gouging, and it was inflation, which has been curbed for the most part, but we're still seeing establishments price gouge. And what's happening is people are saying, screw it. So you're seeing fast food chains and business and fast casual places.
The Today Show just did a big thing on the fast food chains lowering their prices because
they're going by the wayside. A lot of establishments are going by the wayside because they just can't survive because people are just sick of paying what they were being forced to pay. Texas Roadhouse throughout it all hasn't changed prices. So people haven't gone anywhere. All they've done is run to it. I think it's gotten more popular since COVID, where a lot of people have fallen by the wayside because they did start doing in-house their butcher shop, and they releasing it to the public. they've always found ways, because they have great relationships with their vendors, to keep prices. My mom said it the other day. They haven't been there in a while. They're like, yeah, they probably raised their price. I'm like, no, they haven't. They actually haven't raised their prices
They haven't raised.
because they don't need to. They have such consistent clientele and support that they're able to just keep going. And where a lot of people are getting smaller, they're growing.
You know what? The bottom line is this: you want a great meal.
Yep.
For a reasonable price. You can bring your kids, you
Yep.
can go yourself, you can go with your loved one, you can go with a group of people. You can have a quiet dinner, you can have a blowout dinner, you can go line dancing if you want.
Yes.
But the bottom line is you're going to get a great you're going to get great service. You're going to feel like you're home. What more do you want?
And then with the app, a lot of the time, because they're so busy, you're worried about weight. So you're like, screw it. Like the Yogi Berra line. The place, no one goes there anymore. It's too crowded. The opposite's the case there. The app's amazing. Like, I've used it. First of all, if you just want to pick up, it takes.
I've used it.
I wouldn't go and not use it. Like, it actually is so easy. Like, you put your name in, it tells you when you'll be up, and you go there within minutes, you're up. Like, it's actually just like going and not waiting at all. And you can go no matter when you want to go. So Texas Roadhouse, we love them. I know they're strong supporters of us, and we truly appreciate it. Eddie Garcia, we'll hopefully talk to them next week, as the college football season will just be a week or two away. We appreciate everyone who joined us today. Defo will be back tomorrow. But I appreciate you writing it out with me, the one and only Tony Segreto. Enjoy your 50s while I'm literally sweating in my home already at 9 o'clock in the morning. So to say jealous is an understatement.
55 now. 55.
We love you. Thank you so much, Tony. Enjoy your day, my friend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
The one and only Tony Segreto, the one and only Mike Mayo will be back. We had a fantastic affair yesterday as we were at Tarpon River Brewing Company in Fort Lauderdale. I've heard of it. I didn't really know it too well, and I'm sort of mad at myself because the food they brought out was fantastic. I mean, just getting a lot of time there's a food truck at a brewery, and the food truck's good. Occasionally breweries will have little snacks, but it's where you find food. And the food we had yesterday was fantastic. It was great. The professor was with us. The beer was great. We all were in a nice mode by the end of that show. And the food was just really good. So if you get a chance, it's out in Fort Lauderdale, Tarpon River Brewing Company, fantastic. And today will be at one of our favorite places this Saturday. It is Oyster Fest, the what are we calling it? The Pearl Jam by the Sea, I guess is what we're calling it. Pearl Jam by the Sea at Even Keel Fish Shack, Lauderdale by the Sea, this Saturday, 1 to 4. The tickets are going fast. Just visit Lauderdale Food and Winefest.com for those, or Eventbrite.com. Search Even Keel Fish Shack for tickets. It's going to be a blast this Saturday. We're going to be at Even Keel Fish Shack today with Brad talking about what's to come this Saturday. So please join us at 1 o'clock. And tomorrow morning, Defo will be back, as we will have a trivia challenge with the one and only Dave Gurgles Gurgley for Tony Segreto for the Getting Rest, Mr. Atlantic City, Jeff DeForest, Defo. I am Mike Lubie Lubitz. We will see you tomorrow on the Defo Show with Lubie here on South Florida Live.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my show.